What if the toughest moments in your life could become the foundation for your greatest strength? Today, we're talking about how women can rise above challenges, rediscover their purpose, and reclaim their confidence. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Since October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, today's conversation is especially meaningful. We're shining the light on a resilience, a recovery, and creating a stronger future for women navigating life after adversity. If you've ever faced setbacks, doubted yourself, or wondered how to rebuild when life doesn't go according to plan, this episode is for you. We hope you walk away with strategies and encouragement to help you feel confident, resilient, and supported as you explore that next chapter. As a reminder, for all the links and resources shared in this episode, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Joining me today is Dr. Brooke Jones, founder of Stronger Women. Brooke is a speaker, coach, and leader whose passion is helping women overcome life's toughest challenges and step into their full strength. And with October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, this is the perfect time to share her work. Brooke is committed to empowering women to not just survive, but thrive. Brooke, welcome to the Simply Retirement Podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Eric, for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I know we talked about this for a little bit. It took us a little bit to get on the calendar, but we got it done, and I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And anytime that I get an opportunity to share anything about domestic violence, tips and strategies, I will take it because we all know someone. And sometimes we just don't realize it. It's right in front of us or in our own sphere of influence. So it's good to be here. And thanks for having me here today.
Well, let's start there. Let's start with your story. What led you to create Stronger Women? And how did your own experience as a survivor shape the 5-step healing model?
Well, that really is the foundation of Stronger Women. And it began in my own story, and so many nonprofits or ministries or organizations have that same founder story. And I am the founder and president of Stronger Women. We originally were founded as a nonprofit in 2013 as Stronger Than Espresso. And we find that a lot of people still know us as the old name, Stronger Than Espresso. But then in 2020, we changed our name to Stronger Women. Now, we didn't abandon Stronger Than Espresso because that's fundamental to our work. The Stronger Than Espresso is the name of the healing process that we use in our restorative program. And, I'm a survivor of abuse and violence, and I say unfortunately, but what was sort of meant to be destructive and detrimental in my life, really, I'm a very strong woman of faith, and my faith is what really brought me through. And I believe God gave me this new opportunity to share what I share now with women to give them help. So I was a survivor of sexual abuse as a child, and I grew up in a very strict religious home. So there was a lot of spiritual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. Male privilege was very much part of the culture, not just in the religious aspect, but in the systemic culture and generational family that I grew up in. So abuse as a teenager was prevalent. I was abused then, unfortunately, did not understand that these were unhealthy relationships. And because I did not know any different, I really often think I was groomed to be abused, which sounds sort of negative. But what I've discovered is that there is ways that we can change this, right? So understanding abuse, we can actually problem solve and make changes. That led me to becoming an adult, where I did get married. I had 2 different marriages that both were abusive in nature, different types of abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, physical, there's non-physical, punching somebody's a hole in the wall is a threat, but it's what we call non-physical abuse, right? So abuse in these relationships. In the first marriage, I was young, right? And I had a career. The one thing that always saved me, Eric, was my education. That was one thing that I now at Stronger Women, I put a lot of effort into building educational programs for the women because education is such an important piece of their foundation. You cannot take someone's education away. Right? You can take everything else away, but you can't take that away. You can't take their faith. You can't take their education. There's some things you can't strip away from another human being. And I've been to those places. So I originally, thought, well, I have a successful career. I'm going to get out of this relationship and this won't happen to me again. Okay. And that happens to many people in their 20s or in early relationships. They don't really recognize what it is as abusive tactics. So they don't really prepare themselves for what might happen again. And abusive relationship patterns do continue. And I can speak personally because they did in my case. I met a new person who was very charming, very charismatic, who needed to do two things to me. And this is why this is how you know it's abuse. There's isolation. Okay, two things, isolation and dependency. Isolation and dependency. It comes in different ways. In my case, what it was he said, darling, we're going to write our own love story. Like who doesn't want that, right? Like what romance novel or movie tell me that was going to be my life at that age, right? And I thought, this is going to be beautiful. So I went across the country. I left my career. I left my social network. I left my family. I left everybody who was a confidant safe. Once I was across the country, I was isolated. Now I had no financial means because he had everything to take care of us, right? Or so he had said. Once I was isolated and dependent, everything changed. And that's what happens in an abusive relationship. People don't realize it's not like one day you just say, I'm going to marry someone who is abusive to me. It's a slow process, and they are very charming and they're very loving. And it really speaks to the vulnerable need that we have to be loved, right? Just every human, right? We want to be loved. And as women, if we've grown up in an abusive cycle or home, we of course want that need for love and security. And there's nothing wrong with that. So what happened with me is abuse continued as it always does, right? So it got more, then it was a F-bomb spray every day. He would take the cabinets and destroy all the silverware and every heirloom. And my life turned into focused on him. What could I do to keep him from exploding or getting upset or what have you? And it became terrorizing, and eventually abuse continued. It did become physical, and it got to a point where he at one point held me hostage. And, and I always say that he held me hostage and beat me and all these terrible things. And I had to escape to an emergency room. And I always stop there because I'm like, this is the man who was my husband. That's why intimate partner violence and domestic violence is so difficult to understand and admit, because this is the person that vowed to love you, vowed to protect you. And in your case, build financial wealth together. We're going to have a home together. We're going to build this life and dreams. And it's very destructive to your humanity. So when I got to the hospital, the police were there and they were telling me, they had this little brochure, about domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's not me. That's not me. And I did. And who do you think picked me up at that hospital?
Your husband?
He did. Yes. I called him, who I escaped from, who a taxi took me. That is who I called, because it was safer to be with him, to know where he was, than to actually be away from him. The fear is so great. That began. Abuse, of course, got worse. And once there had been police reports and things had happened, things started that I could not stop. And I thought, I can get divorced. Well, that led to 2 more years of stalking, aggravated stalking. There were battery cases, criminal battery. It was just like a litany of legal. And in every case, I was humiliated in the court system. And by the time 2005 came, so again, we're talking, this was many years ago now, but this finally 2005 came, and my aunt said to him, my aunt was my bulldog. I had one champion who came from Texas, right? She came from Texas. She came across the country to get me, and she said to him, let her go. And he turned to her and he said, I won't until I destroy her. Hmm. And she said, I guess I must have looked not so great at that time, but she looked at I look over at her, and I guess, she said, you have. I mean, you have, because the trauma of all of that, I became a waif of a person. You become a hollow shell of a human, right? And I couldn't even function. So fortunately, we were able to sign this off. Had a mediator that mediated this, and I was able to leave and be on my own. And I got to Texas, which is where I live now. I could not work. It took me a good year before I could really function well. And I went through a rebuilding project that built me. But my faith, Eric, was really important in that time, because I came to that place where he could steal everything, which he had, but he could not take my faith. And it was like, even in death itself, I would still have my faith. Does that make sense?
It
and
does.
That's how raw it gets. And so when people ask the question, they don't understand, why do they stay? What they don't understand is how difficult it is to really leave and to really release and grieve all of those hopes and dreams that you had planned on. And that really is destructive to a financial future. I came out of that decimated, and I had trouble getting work again. Okay. Finally, when I could go back to work, nobody would hire me, $9 an hour. That's it. Mm-hmm. And so all these years later, and then in 2006, the Lord spoke to me and said, stronger than espresso. And I began writing the curriculum that we use today. It's in its 4th edition now. It's the 5-step healing process. He wrote September 19th, 2006. God said, stronger than espresso. And he said those 5 steps, those 5 compass steps about the awakening and recognizing patterns of behavior and moving people through a 5-step healing process, women could find hope and healing in just a short time. And that's really what we do at Stronger. We invite women into our open groups. We invite them into our support groups, which are support groups or classes, and they can find hope and healing, whether they were abused recently or even if they were abused decades ago. For me, it's been layers, Eric. Fortunately, in 2006, the great news is my husband today, his name is Rick, and we were able to marry, and I was able to have 2 wonderful children. I will tell you that my ex-husband, remember, he was a stalker, right? When I used to get birthday cards from him in my new life, right? There was no connection. There were no children. There was no reason to talk. And he would send birthday cards for my children, like, oh, your son has been born and your daughter has been born. And that was for him to be saying, I'm watching you. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the long tail of abuse. People don't realize that if you've been stalked in any way, that could do it. And what you're talking about in terms of finances and things, one of the things I struggled with is there was an industry that I worked in and I had a financial opportunity there. But because he was still connected to that entire industry, I couldn't even do it. So I had to restart from base 1, entry level, and work my way back up and rebuild the savings. So let's just fast forward to today. Stronger Women is a thriving nonprofit. We continue to get leads and women who are all over the country. We can do classes virtually, hybrid, and I can teach people to help navigate these classes. And at Stronger Women, we really want to share about domestic violence, and we want to be a conduit for training. If anybody needs help, training, tips, and how to respond, we want to be that conduit for that.
One of the things, and I kind of picked up different pieces of this from your own story as you were sharing it.
Yeah.
But I think there's so many myths and just misconception about domestic violence. What are one or two, what you would consider the biggest misconceptions that you think you'd like to clear up?
Oh, the biggest misconception is the question, and just by the nature of the question, it's a shaming question. Why doesn't she just leave?
Hmm.
Or why does she stay?
Hmm.
Or similar question on the same line is, if it's that bad, why does she stay? You know what I mean? She must like it because she's putting up with it. Do you see how all of those different types of questions?
Right.
What people don't understand is in order to leave domestic violence, you have to be willing to give everything up. You have to be willing to give up your house. You have to be willing to give up your automobile. You have to be willing to give up your career. You have to be willing to give up access to money. You have to be willing to give up your kids in some cases. You have to literally be willing to let it all go because you are often where moms and you've got kids that you need to take care of. And if the only way out is living homeless in the car, that is not what a mom is going to choose for her and her family. She is going to stay in that relationship as long as she can so that she can try to make peace and make it work out. Especially if a woman has any faith of any kind or culture that is a shaming culture or a religious aspect that divorce is a real problem or you can't leave, those women are even shamed more and they are silent. And that is what we see. And those are the whispers we hear, Eric, is those are the women that are really struggling, right? They're secretly being abused behind the scenes, right?
As we think about women who are starting to step into what that new season of life looks like, if they've gotten past it and they're just trying to put the pieces back together. And I always use the comparison of putting the puzzle pieces back together when you lose a husband, when you're talking financially.
Mhm.
But this goes beyond that. Just like in what I do, the finances is just a small piece of it. But when you get the emotions, you get to the just again being broken, and now putting all those life pieces back together being more important than even just the money part of it. How do you feel like women can start to reframe their past experiences and turn those into strengths?
I think that's a great question because people find their best strengths from the lessons that they've learned. And I find that if they can turn that, instead of looking at it as a regret path, they can really look that with a hopeful view. I think that women today, one of the things they need to do is begin to look at their financial picture today, no matter whether they're in a relationship or not in a relationship. Having your name on one utility bill, if that's possible that you can do, always having your own checking account or savings account. Okay. Always making sure that you are having conversations with your partner about financial matters and not leaving it just up to them to handle it. If there's a financial advisor like Eric, you want to meet your financial advisor and know them and have the joint meetings with your partner. Don't just be informed by them. Those would be the things that I would tell women to do. And what I would say is if you're in a relationship and any one of those things I've suggested, your partner is absolutely adamantly opposed to, should be a warning to you that that is not a financial equality in a relationship. That is an abusive power and control. And there's no reason that one party should have more information about the finances than the other party, especially if there's a marriage, right? And so I think that women are afraid, and we often are taught that we don't need to know about that, or our husband takes care of that. And we let them put us at risk sometimes, not because they're trying to, but because maybe they don't understand. And I had a recent situation myself where I tried to go get my daughter a driver's license. And because I couldn't prove that I had a utility bill or I had the lease or anything or the rent in my name, I struggled. And that is something that when you're out on your own, having that foundation already in place, should you need to leave, is a really good place to be. Get those steps. You need a go bag, right? If you're thinking about leaving, you need those things, but you need to have some financial stability before you just head out on your own. So that's what I would say. I would say get prepared and look for girlfriends that have some financial, and ask them to help you understand some information about financial uh, investing or things like that,
Awareness,
questions
you
to
mean?
ask it. Yeah, exactly.
What I'm going to, and this, I wasn't necessarily planning to include this, but I don't know if there's any financial advisors listening to this or not, but quite honestly, I think it's incumbent upon us as financial planners to involve both spouses. You can't allow one spouse or the other, whether it's the husband or the wife, to completely control that relationship with you either. And we actually insist that both spouses be involved. I won't take on client couples unless both spouses are involved. And it doesn't mean they have to be at every meeting, but I want to make sure that I don't want to be one of those statistics that,
Mm.
there's a statistic that I've used quite a bit that 70% of women leave their financial advisor when they lose their husband after being widowed. And it's because it's exactly what you're talking about is they weren't involved. They didn't have a relationship with that financial advisor. And now that relationship is gone, I don't want to be one of those stats. I want the couple, if it is a couple, then they have to both be involved. But I think that's because you just never know what could come down the road.
Exactly. I like that. And you're looking at that retention of that female client, especially if women do live longer than men, right?
Yes.
Them having to handle those finances on their own is a reality for many women. So getting that message as young as possible throughout our lives as possible is important. And I think women have emotional attachments to money that because some of it has been negative, right? We're in growing up and getting women to really have a more positive approach to money and that they're smart enough. I think that has been a shaming idea in growing up as a female. And I think that is a message that we need to just bust open and say no more. We're not going to do that anymore. Right.
Absolutely. Well, and you brought up the word hope, and I've been looking forward to asking you this question because I think is a really great concept. You talk about the science of hope.
Yes.
What does that mean? How does it help women move from surviving to thriving?
Yes, I'd love to talk about the science of hope is a very simple idea that hope is a skill and it can be taught. And it's one of the things that it's a science that's getting more traction, but it helped me understand why Stronger Than Espresso has always worked because the functionality has been built into our curriculum and our programs. Hope is really simple. You establish a goal, you set pathways and you discover them, right? Through navigation, right? Talking to others, you connect, you think of new pathways, you've got your goal, you find your pathway. Once you have that, you have the willpower to make it to tomorrow. And in that essence, it generates energy. And that is the science of hope. It's generate. And a person who believes that tomorrow is going to be better and that they can have a part in it is a hopeful person. And that's a person that can get through anything. Right. And so that's what we do. And we really work on that. And I wanted to just share one thing too. I just published this book on Amazon as well. It's called Alive Fret. It's a 40-day journal, and it's a 40-day journey of hope. I attached some scriptures and some music verses, and we're going to be starting a journey of hope. You can buy this on Amazon,
Awesome.
but we're going to be doing it in conjunction with Stronger Women so we can connect more women in a hopeful journey because it's a skill, Eric. If we can teach them hope, they can get through anything regardless of what comes their way.
I love that. I think that's amazing. I was looking, like I said, I was looking forward to asking that question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a couple other things before you get a chance. I want to make sure you get a chance to share how people get in touch with you, the resources that you offer through Stronger Women. The other thing is we know abuse doesn't necessarily affect just the individual. It has a ripple effect across the family, children, workplace, their communities. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes. Often a lot of times another myth, if you will, people will say, well, that's just a family matter. That's an issue in the family. Well, it is not an issue in the family. We know that most people who are in an abusive relationship will be stalked or abused in the workplace. So that's a security issue in the workplace. They now know that domestic violence, men who choke women or strangle women are the same men who are cop killers. This is now statistically known. So these are dangerous people. Now we realize that it's affecting our communities. Children who witness violence, there's at least 10 million children a year that witness domestic violence, which creates trauma, chronic stress. And there is many family members that want to help but can't. And I think that if we suspect abuse, here's what we can do. We can ask lovingly to a friend, when I see you, I'm concerned. I want you to know that is everything okay at home? Is there anything, can you describe your relationship? I found this resource that has a quiz that might be helpful. Can we talk about something? Ask a gentle question because they may have been waiting to share that they're being abused and they've had no one to tell. And you're the first person who's asked in 10 years.
I'm not even sure how exactly to phrase this question because I think you've already shared your story and it is truly amazing. But is there, all the things you've done, we've got a chance to connect through some different events and things like that. And just, I've had a chance to hear your story multiple times. I'm so impressed by what you're doing. But is there someone, do you have an example story, somebody that you've worked with that you might want to share? And you don't have to necessarily share names, but just someone who found strength, found a new direction through Stronger Women.
Well, I can tell you, we have a survivor
there's more
story.
Than one.
Yeah, we have many, but I'll tell you one brief one. And I just saw her this morning. Just as a matter of fact, we did an early thing on the news this morning. One of my original classes back in 2013 had a young woman, and I can say her name. First name is Angela, and she was in my class, and she didn't want to come to my class, but she did, and so we met, and this was in 2013, so you can see she was able to find healing from the abusive relationship. It took some time. She became a successful real estate agent. Now she is a broker, and she was recently in January. We voted her on our board of directors at Stronger Women. So she went from client participant in 2013, and she is a active board member for Stronger Women for the charity. So I think she is one of my favorites because I've seen her just heal, and her story has given so many other women hope. When one woman does it, so many other women. And that's the thing about our logo. We have 3 women on there, and we fill that logo every day. It's either 2 women helping one, right? 2 women grab onto one and help them. Or I find 3 women that don't even know each other that connect through one of our programs. And now it's 3 women that just became friends. And you put 3 women together, I mean, it's pretty much you got friends right there, right? So we find that the logo we get to do every day, and that's exciting. And so that's really what we do at Stronger Women.
Awesome. Well, so for someone listening, maybe in an abusive situation, or maybe they know somebody who is, what are the first, maybe just a couple, what are the safest steps they could take? And then what resources should they keep close and be aware of?
Sure. I think the first thing is there are domestic violence hotlines that I think everybody should write. There's I think it's 1-800-799-SAFE. But it is the domestic violence hotline, and Erica, you put that on here, but I think everybody should have that number.
Yep.
You also can go to strongerwomen.com. We have various ways to contact us through our website. There's also some information about emergency planning. The first thing someone always needs to do is safety planning. Safety is the number one thing. So I always tell people this isn't, we're going to jump in the minivan and run away. We have to think through a plan. And we're happy at Stronger Women. They can reach us or the domestic violence hotlines or a shelter in their area.
Perfect. And you shared a number of different phone numbers. We are going to definitely share those in this episode summary. We're going to share your website. Any other ways of connecting with Stronger Women, with you? Anything else you would want to share?
We are on both Instagram. We are on Facebook, and I am also on LinkedIn. Stronger Women is on LinkedIn, but feel free to connect with me as well personally on LinkedIn, or we can connect on the social media channels and continue partnering to end domestic violence.
Perfect. We're going to be able to share all those links that Brooke has shared, the resources, her book, the phone numbers, everything. We're going to get those in the episode summary. Brooke, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been truly inspiring. As always, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If today's conversation resonated with you, I would encourage you to connect directly with Brooke and explore the resources available through Stronger Women. Whether you're looking for support or if you're just looking to get involved in Brooke's mission, again, you're going to find the links to her website and ways to reach her in the show notes. That is it for today's episode. For all the links and resources mentioned, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share the show. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.